Hello, everybody. It is 8:03 on June the 16th. I'm calling to order the Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee. Our task tonight, our agenda item is to discuss the Great Island purchase. One thing that I would like to do first, before we dive into the topic, is Amy Zabatakis has asked me for an opportunity to address the group. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy.
Thank you. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes before our meeting to disclose to this group that it's been brought to my attention that there's an appearance of a potential conflict of interest concerning my involvement with these discussions. So I'm going to disclose to the group the nature of the conflict and why I don't think there's an actual conflict. I represented the owners of 150 and 152 Goodwise River Road in connection with their objection to the existence of a commercial equestrian facility on the property. These are the two lots that are to the north of the accessway that's part of the purchase. My representation was limited to bringing this use to the town's attention and requesting that the Planning and Zoning Department enforce the town's regulations in the matter. I was not asked to represent these clients in connection with the purchase, and I don't know whether they are or are not in favor of the purchase. Therefore, I do not believe there's a conflict in my reviewing the purchase and upholding my obligations as a member of the RTM. However, out of an abundance of caution and to remove even the appearance of conflict, I have resigned from my representation of these clients, even on the limited use of discussing with the town the regulations and this commercial use. So, as I said, I don't think that there's an actual conflict. I think anything that the steps I've taken should also eliminate the appearance of conflict. But if anyone has any issues or questions about that, I would be happy to answer them.
Much appreciated, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Any questions from the group?
None for me.
Okay. Okay. All right then.
Just the house again, though, real quick. It was 150, 152. Goodwise.
Correct. Goodwise River Road is the two lots to the north of the accessway.
Got it. Thanks.
You said 150 and 152.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Amy, very much for clarifying that and bringing it to the group's attention. What I would like to do now is just to provide a roadmap for the discussion that I'd like to just give an outline to everybody to crystallize our thought process on how we're going to conduct the conversations tonight. First of all, I'd like to welcome our visitors from Planning and Zoning, Director of Land Use, Jeremy Ginsburg, and we have two representatives, commissioners from the Planning and Zoning Department, Stephen and Adam, are also our guests today. So thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time and joining our committee to help answer any questions we might have. A couple of things I'd like to go through. I think everybody has received information from Wayne Fox regarding the contract, a summary, and if you had a request to get a copy of the contract, you were to reach out to him. It is very clear that anything we discuss regarding the contract is considered confidential, and we need to go into what's called an executive session, which means we stop the meeting, we turn off the recording, Mike will make sure no visitors come into our meeting, and then we will discuss any matters contract related. And then when we're done with those matters, we will then dismiss executive session, call the meeting back, the public meeting back to order, and then carry on with the remaining topics. So I'd like to structure the meeting that way, where we kind of knock the contract first, and then we can talk about some other things with regards to the property, potential uses if the town should not purchase it, what might happen, and then all the other questions that the group has had before, and to the extent that we have answers already, and then summarize at the end of the meeting what remaining questions we have, so we can be doing our homework between now and the 23rd, which is next Thursday. We need to get the group back together and vote on how we feel. So that's my intent to conduct tonight's meeting. As an aside, I encourage everybody to follow along with TV 79, some of the other commission, some of the other committees meetings, some of the conversations that they're having, that you might have answers if you watch those meetings as well. And then just talking to people in your districts to get a sense of what the general consensus is out there, and what people's issues and concerns are, and prevailing opinions and desires. Having nothing. Yes, Dan.
This is my first year on PZNH, and it would help me and maybe others watching to know what the context is of our committee being assigned this task as regards Great Island. Like, what is our purview on this?
So there's been a couple of committees that have been assigned. Public health and safety. They're going to be looking with the lens of primarily, safety issues. Public Works is going to be looking at the purchase with the lens of, sewer, water, facilities, roads. The Finance and Budget Committee is going to be looking at it with the lens of, the purchase and the bonding that's involved. And then our committee is looking at it as if you purchased a house, and all the due diligence that you would do to purchase a house. Do you have title? Do you have access? Are you exposed in any way environmentally or with title concerns? So our committee is primarily focused on that. And then, quite honestly, in the regards to what else could be developed there, from a planning and zoning perspective, if we should not buy the property. So to understand the other side of the coin, so we can go into this fully eyes wide open to make our best decision and recommendation to the RTM from those perspectives.
Great, thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Having said all of that, I am going to go into executive session so we can discuss the contract and confidential matters relating to this purchase. Mike, you let me know when I have the all clear.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Hello, it is 8:58, June 16th. Planning, Zoning, and Housing. We are done our executive session, and now we are back to our public portion of the meeting. Next topic that I would like to discuss is, and this is an understanding of, we understand that the town does not yet have outlined all of the potential uses. We've all been attended some of the public sessions where Monica has outlined some potential uses and some ideas to consider. And she's equated this to a blank canvas for where this is the purchase, and then there's some, years of work to be done for future development of the property. So one of the things that I would like to have the group understand is, if we were not to purchase this property, what could potentially happen at this land as of right under our current zoning regulations, and then if there was a developer that wanted to challenge our current zoning regulations and do something beyond that, what that process would look like. So Steve, did we lose Steve? Steve Olvani, did we lose him?
I'm still here.
You moved in the tile. You moved in the Brady Bunch tile. You're not in my upper right-hand corner.
You're upper left on my screen.
Okay. So Steve, could you just give the group a summary on, this is the assumption town doesn't buy the property. What could a developer do as of right in our current zoning regs? Any with as far as single family homes, any other potential uses that are out there on the books, and then what the process would look like if they were to challenge.
Okay, in total, with all the buildings, it's a 6. We figured that out. Not all the land is equal, because like I said earlier, one of those roads is 1.3 acres. There's also a lot of ledge rock there. There's some sensitive areas. The property is zoned R1, so in the grand scheme of life, if you're looking at it that way, and you got all 1 acre houses, you could put 59 houses on there. That would never, ever, ever happen because you need interior roads. You need space to get between the houses, and no one would ever subdivide it into 60 lots. At the end of the day, I've not seen all of them, but some of the test fits that were done on the property range anywhere from 25 houses down to about, I think it's 16 houses. So it's somewhere in the neighborhood of that. There's different ways to subdivide the property, whether you have the one road or you have other roads that go in there. In my career, I've seen it many different ways. Most in Darien, most were straight subdivisions that would go in there. With that said, to use all of the land that's there, you'd land up demoing the equestrian center. You'd land up demoing the main house. You'd land up demoing other items. I bet you in the real world, somebody would allocate a number of acres to the large estate house that you can see from the water. Someone would probably keep the equestrian center and just use the other land.
And everybody who's not speaking, please go on mute. It's so difficult to understand, Stephen, because there's so much background noise from everybody else.
I'm sorry. It might be my house because I got a lot of kids and a dog.
Oh, okay.
So that's the big open issue. In terms of one thing I just want to throw in there, in terms of prices of lots that are on Long Neck Point, the most recent lots that are on the market for sale are in the neighborhood of $4 million to $5 million. I know Amy Barsante knows about the 2 lots that sold recently. I think it was 1 lot or 2 lots that sold that's interior.
Yeah, it sold, it closed for 3.6 on
For
Pear
3.6.
Tree Point in Long Neck. Yep.
That's one on the corner that the guy had a lacrosse field on it for a long time. The other lots that are out there that are on the market today, I think they're still on the market, or what we call the Hans Mendes lots. He bought the old Pear Tree Point School. I think Amy's Abatakis was involved with that at one point in time. Either you subdivided or you unsubdivided. You did something. Those lots are on the market for somewhere in the neighborhood between $4 and $4.5 million.
Yep.
Other lots suffer larger. The only other item that I want to just make sure that you people know, and then I'm going to let Jeremy speak and add into it too. In 2014, we created a thing called the Senior Active Overlay Zone. The only place that can go on are 1 acre lots. And it has to be a minimum lot size of 3 acres. That was a thing that, if anybody remembers, there was an old hardware store way before my time called Noble Brothers. It's on Settlers Trail. The application was brought forth by Penny Glassmeyer, and on a 3 acre parcel of land, she put, after a change in the zoning and created of the overlay zone, 6 townhouses on it. With the 6 townhouses, you also have to do an affordable component. And the affordable component that they did, or Ms. Glassmeyer did, is 2 off-site affordable units. Going back 1 second, any subdivision that's larger than 5 lots or 5 lots or larger has to have another lot that's affordable. So on this property, if you did them on site, you'd have some affordables there. If you didn't do any affordables on site, you'd have to do affordables off site. So in big deals that I've seen, or big parcels that I've seen, would have like 100 acres. They may just chop off 3 acres at one point in time and build a house. And I've seen that a couple of different times where someone owns a whole bunch of land. In a lot of spots, it happens up in Dutchess County and Paulding, where they have all this land and they just lop off an acre, build a house. They lop off an acre and build a house. So there are a lot of things that you could do on the property in terms of multifamily. And, a wild card in the room, you can always do an 830G. You guys know that word. It's not a 4-letter word. We do have 2 830Gs, towns, projects in our town. This property is served by water and sewer. We do have some 830Gs that are floating around our town right now. If it's a lot that's, an acre or 2 acres or 3 acres, someone could put an 830G apartment house there, which what 830G means is that it's a multifamily building of where 30% of the units are affordable. Anything you want to add, Jeremy, that I may have missed or gone too deep on?
Sure. I think Steve's got it pretty much correct. Is obviously the most likely scenario, and the one most of us think of, is a developer coming in and putting up single family homes, 10, 15, 20, whatever the number would lay out, basically after extending the roads in from either Rings End or Great Island Road or Coon Point Road, whatever that might be. Certainly the other option is, as he mentioned, what Penny Glassmeyer did with an active senior overlay. That would be another possibility. And like any other 1 acre zoning area in town, there are other special permit uses that are allowed. So if you didn't want to subdivide the property, special permit uses, which would need to go before planning and zoning, like a subdivision would include things like a church, a country club, a riding club, any of those social or recreational clubs would be a potential as well. So there are some other uses in the R1 zone that are potential. It really depends. Certainly there are constraints, as Steve mentioned: wetlands, ledge, steep slopes, etc., tidal wetlands. But here, the fact that it's served by public and sewer makes things much easier. So basically, those seem to be the most likely alternatives. We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
The permitted principal uses are single family houses, public schools, and private open space reservations for wildlife sanctuaries. The other big item that jumps out there, principal uses requiring a special permit, municipal buildings and uses for the town of Darien, and other governmental uses intended primarily to serve the needs of the local community. That is a special permit use. So everything that pretty much gets done on here is going to come from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay. And to clarify that, so the process under which the town is going to be developing it, if they are successful in this purchase, anything that they want to do would fall under that's considered special permit use, and that process loop would involve the planning and zoning commissioners to review it and
Correct.
render a decision on it.
That appears to be the likely case.
Okay, and in that loop is an ability for the public to weigh in by default. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there would have to be a public hearing on any special permit application.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. If the town does buy it or somebody else does buy it, it will be in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission, I would venture to guess, for the next 5 years.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Okay. Any questions on this topic for Steve or Jeremy with regards to, if the town is not the successful purchaser, alternative uses?
I mean, how likely would it be that a developer comes in and spends $100 million on the property, builds 30 houses? It's going to cost them another $100 million, and then hopefully sell them for 7 to 10 million to make whatever 75 or 100 million. I mean, because I think listening to both Jeremy and Steven seems to be kind of the middle ground if a developer would take it. I mean, how realistic is it? And I mean, it's going to take a long time to build those houses as well. It's not going to happen over a year or two. I mean, that's like a 5 to 10 year project, I would assume, for a developer.
It's at least 5. I don't know if it's 10. I can tell you that in a town like Darien or a town like Greenwich, some of these people, they Upper Greenwich has been being developed for years. You can get your quote unquote money back on your initial investment pretty quickly if you sell some of the houses on the water. I mean, I know most of you guys, I think, have been to the main house. You can practically see it on Montauk Point. That's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
Somebody would buy it. Delafield Island's got the same thing. You guys remember there was that lot that was clear cut? Those things are huge.
And just to give a
his
perspective on values, I mean, people on Long Neck Point, some of the parcels towards the end of Long Neck Point that had views either on either side, much of them were going for about 10 million, and they were the houses were being torn down. Yeah, so there's definitely, some of those parcels in there would be, and that's pre-COVID pricing. Now, who's to say where pricing is going to be going now? But yeah, there's definitely some parcels that would be at least $10 million just for the land.
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember how much the 2 Zangrillo lots sold for, but that was a subdivision that we looked at a couple different times.
Yeah.
Those 2 lots, and I mean, most of those houses have pool houses and pools attached. They're big. The Zangrillo was a great lot, and they tore out a nice house.
I think those went for like 7 to 8 each.
Yeah, that's a while.
And they look out the other direction too. They don't look out at the open. Some of the lots on Long Neck Point on that, looking out that direction, also went for over 7 with houses that needed to be torn down.
Yeah.
Recent lots on my road or near my road in Contentment Island have been between 7 and 8.
Yeah. If I was a guessing man, somebody might do a mix in there, which either some big lots, some small lots. You could potentially put a Kensett in this development.
Mm-hmm.
How many acres does the Ziegler lot have?
Again?
I think about 60 as well.
They've got about.
I think. I'll double check that.
The Ziegler lot. How many?
The Ziegler owned swath, I think some of them have been subdivided already, way back in the 80s, I believe, and others are left as large parcels that could be subdivided.
Steve, Jeremy,
most of the Ziegler property is already subdivided.
NBC had a piece tonight about private equity firms coming in and buying houses and then turning them into rentals on a massive scale. And in the marketplace, have you seen any private equity firms coming in and who have the resources to floating $100 million, $103 million while you're trying to build X number of houses is an expensive process?
I'm doing a project right now in Tarrytown. The value of the dirt is I think it's $150 million. The infrastructure cost was another $100 million, and the developer is Toll Brothers, and it's been in the works for these 15 years. And that's right on the water. It's called Sleepy Hollow. It's called Hudson something. I forget the name of it. It's called Hudson Edge. You can Google it. There's a lot of money behind that one. There's a lot of money behind it, and they're just building and building and building.
But it's a big company doing it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. One other thing that I would like to poll the group is a general consensus of what you're hearing in your conversations with people that are in your district, or people that are in your friend group or your work groups, or just residents from Darien, what is the prevailing mood and concerns, and whether positivity or negativity towards the purchase? Because I think it's also we need to be very mindful of the minutia that we need to look at as a committee, but we also need to do that in the context under which we feel what the residents of Darien who elected us into these roles ultimately want to happen here. So I'll open it up to the group to say, what are people hearing? What's your general sense?
I'll be happy to start. I mean, I kind of hear two things, or comments and thoughts in two areas. The one area is all about the purchase price and what does it mean for taxes, and which is the one piece. And I think and that one, people either have one viewpoint or the other. We all know from John Zagrodzky what it means for taxes and what it means for incremental debt and bonding that we need to do. But the other piece, which I've been hearing even more loudly, is that people are saying, listen, once we've bought it, so what does it mean for the budget down the line? Because we know we have to develop it, and there's these huge development plans. So people are starting to, how would I say that? Debating and saying, well, in the future, will we have debates whether we're going to spend our tax dollars on schooling, or instead of schooling, we're going to be building, I don't know, or renovating the main house over there so we can throw parties and people can stay there, right? So I think that's the bigger discussion that I've heard, where people are way more concerned about the ongoing cost and the plans, and whether that falls into the town budget, and what that might do with choices going forward versus other priorities the town have. And I thought what was interesting is that certain folks came up with a proposal for a solution where they basically said they're not really worried about, that the town is getting a great deal, and that, we're doing all the right things financially about the purchase, but what's about the governance going forward? And I've heard a lot of people with the opinion that the governance for the island should be separated from the town, so that we basically have two different pillars. We have, the school budget, the education budget, we have the town budget, and then we have the island budget, so that after the purchase, basically, the island has to stand on its own feet, and not compete with the other two pots, so to speak.
Okay. What else are people hearing as a general consensus? Mike?
Will the town be straitjacketed, put in a straitjacket financially going forward? And the Public Works Committee is going to make, from sounding and listening to their meeting from last night, they're going to make a proposal that it almost be run like a sewer commission with professional management, and it be separated out of the town budget. Now, how do you charge? Yeah, $500 for a season sticker, a $20 visit. But the concern about the professional management, that this is going to require professional management with someone with a lot of experience. This is not a Public Works Committee, building a garage, who did a great job. That's not to demean the Public Works Committee, but that we're going to need serious expertise.
Okay. And Mike, in your conversations with people, the general sense are the everyday Darienite, are they for it, against it? Are you hearing positivity, negativity?
At the end of the day, I think they'll vote for it.
You think at the end of the day, most people are excited about it and want to go forward?
Yeah, but the major issue and the other issue is the district chairs are supposed to be surveying to make sure that we have a quorum on Monday night. That people have made plans to leave before then, and to make sure that is everyone who's on this call. I know one is going to be away, but anybody else not going to be there to vote in person on the 27th? So Dan, you're not going to be there?
No, I'll be there.
All right, so everyone's going to be there on the call except one. That's good. That's good news.
Okay. Anybody else that?
Maybe I could add some stuff to it. I think, generally speaking, probably even more than generally speaking, people are in favor. I've heard very few people who were opposed. And I've heard some people violently in favor, who can't imagine how anyone could possibly vote no, et cetera, et cetera. But what I'm also finding, and this is why I'm glad we're having all these meetings, I'm finding that people don't have a really clear picture of what the it is. When I talk to people and I say, well, you realize that the town probably will not have access to it for quite some time. And they don't understand that. They don't understand that there are tenants on the property. They don't understand that it's fairly likely, given what I'm hearing from Board of Finance, that it will impact our town's bond rating, which will impact not just the cost of this, but the cost of other projects go forward. Not materially, but it will likely take us from our AAA rating down a notch. So I think that people don't have a clear picture, partially because of, well, certainly not because of anyone trying to withhold any information, but just rather the speed at which it's all happening and that people have a lot to digest. So for me, I just wish that people had a clearer picture so there weren't surprises down the road and saying, well, hey, I was supportive of this, but I thought that XYZ was going to happen, or I thought that this building was in good condition, or I thought whatever. So I just struggle with the fact that people are very much in favor of it, but I'm not sure they have a real clear picture of all the potential limits. But I have heard very, short answer, I've heard very little negativity.
Okay. Dan, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I've tried to talk to some of my neighbors. I talked to some people this weekend. I got my first constituent call this afternoon. I imagine she'll be calling you, Werner. Resoundingly negative. A couple that were just just the money. That the concern is that our taxes are going to go up significantly, probably more than have been stated, that this is going to take money away from other necessary things. And a couple of people have brought up just the optics of the transaction. That we, like 2 months ago or so, made the national news on AP for turning down open choice, one of the arguments against being fiscal. And I realize that's Board of Ed budget, but that's not going to matter to a news article. That then the next headline is going to be town that turned down educating the neighbors' kindergartners is buying its own private island.
That's already made the headlines. That's already hit the paper.
Well, it has made local headlines. When this goes through, I'm sure that same AP reporter will be
good point,
chomping at the bit to talk about it. And boy, anyone who knows me even slightly knows I've been working hard to upgrade our town's reputation, and this is going to be a hard thing to fight against. But that's something that I hadn't thought of until I talked to a couple of people this past weekend.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Caroline.
Hi. I wouldn't say that what I've heard is resoundingly negative, but I would say that it's decidedly mixed. I've had 2 people say, absolutely, we should buy it. I can't imagine why we wouldn't. And everybody else is saying, oh, what about the taxes? They're really not sure that they think Zagrodzki's numbers are correct. They think that's probably way under. Definitely what Dan was just talking about. I've heard a lot of commentary about that, about how this looks, and we turn down the neighbors and blah blah blah, all the things you just said, Dan. So yeah, very mixed from the people I've spoken with.
Okay. Priscilla.
I would say, every single person I've talked to is positive about it. Similar concerns about taxes and costs going forward, but then they sort of go back on that and say, well, I guess we can just buy it and then figure out later what happens. And a lot of people are very confident in the Board of Finance and what they've done in the past. And I would say I had similar concerns about it all, especially with the interest rates rising, right? So a lot of their assumptions were based on June 2nd numbers, and things have changed in the last couple of days. But I've been pointing people today, in particular, to yesterday's Board of Finance meeting. It was very informative. It was very helpful in understanding the common sense behind it. And even the whole thing around the the AAA bond rating, explaining the whole process about that, because in many ways the town is already AA, but there are a lot of criteria that go into it, that rating, which brings us to the AAA. And so anyway, it's really worth watching. It's a couple hours long, but it's really worth watching. And I've actually forwarded it to constituents who had concerns.
Thank you for sharing. Okay. How about the members we have not yet heard from? Sandra, Kurt, and Susan.
I can talk specifically. I've had mixed opinions too. The people that are not for it are vehemently not for it, and they're specifically on the financials of it all. My only question is, because I did reach out to a lot of people, and most people aren't even engaged with this, to be completely honest. There's a big majority of residents that are raising their families, busy with raising their kids, and they're not engaged with this. So that's my biggest concern, is how effective are we disseminating this information to the residents? Because at this point, many of the silent majority really aren't engaged in a lot of the town matters, but they will be definitely waking up once their taxes go up. So that's my biggest concern. In the big meeting that we had, I listened. It was very informative, but I noticed most people were on the RTM or in town groups. I didn't hear from too many general residents. It was mostly residents who are engaged in town politics. So that would be my biggest concern, is how are we disseminating this information if you're not on the RTM and generally active in town politics?
Okay. Kurt or Susan, anything to add?
Yeah, I've heard mostly positives. Like Monica said, once in a lifetime opportunity, very difficult to pass it up. But on the other hand, other people are saying, well, what are you going to be doing with the property? And it seems sort of backwards to buy it and then decide later. So that was the biggest question that came up.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Kurt?
Yeah, I agree with Susan. Unfortunately, I've had COVID for a while, so I've been I was stuck in Jamaica for a week, so I was pretty much out of pocket. But the couple people that I've had conversations with have voiced their concerns about putting the cart before the horse. Yeah, let's buy the property, but what are we going to do with it? So that was a big concern of them, but they're very positive because they find it to be a very unique situation, and like the investment in their community. So while the the higher taxes may be a concern of theirs, they do think it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. But their concern is kind of similar to what we've been talking about today, is, God, this is a short timeline. What are we ultimately going to do with it? So from my perspective, that's what I've been hearing. And, I'm curious in continuing these conversations so we can finally, put the horse first.
Okay.
the more controversial discussion I've heard is swimming pool versus no swimming pool. Because the number one interest on that from the survey was the people in town is that there's no swimming pool. And here is a location, no, everyone wanted a swimming pool, but not in their backyard. Well, here's a place to put a swimming pool that's not in anyone's backyard. But there are others who say that would destroy the whole feeling of the space of a swimming pool on the polo field or whatever.
Well, yeah, but they all belong to Weaver.
I can write a book about this, Mike, when I was on planning and zoning, because we did a huge polling around the swimming pool down at Wheat Beach when we did our 10-year plan. And it was a third of the folks who went to vote actually did participate in the voting process. And all it took was basically, call it a handful of folks who were noisier than 1,000 others.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, Amy,
if I could just share my perspective too, is I think I find that people are overall more positive than not. I think it's not too dissimilar of a process that buying a house has been in these past 2 years, where you wish you had the luxury of time to do a full investigation and make a decision in an orderly fashion, but market forces don't often allow that. And I do think, unfortunately, that's the boat we're in, and that the group is going to need to make a decision on what we recommend to the RTM from our perspective next Thursday. So I do know we've talked about a couple of key issues that we talked about in executive session. But be prepared on Thursday to know what your thoughts are. Hopefully we'll have more clarity, but we might not have perfect information, and that's just reality potentially. Other questions or concerns that you feel individually that you would need to know or would be helpful or ideal if you had a magic wand to know before you cast a vote?
After this process is done, are we cheaper or more? Are we significantly less, about the same, or significantly more than New Canaan and Westport?
Yeah, but I think, Mike, I mean, after I've listened to everybody, I think the concerns that were raised were, what does that mean for taxes? And I think we have received some answers from the Board of Finance and from John, what the impact is of the purchase. But my question is, could we ask the Board of Finance to kind of give us and the constituents an idea, what would be the tax impact of basically managing the island with all the improvements? I mean, those are major operating spendings. I mean, spending 100 million in one go is one thing, and one could argue if you really want to realize all of that stuff that you have on your plan, that's at least another 100 million, and that's another point of a mill rate. And I have not seen in any of those meetings anybody addressing what's after the purchase. And I think what I've heard from 4 or 5 folks here today is that this was one of the biggest concerns they've heard from other folks they've talked to. And we have not received a single answer or anything around that. It's only about the purchase.
The Finance and Budget Committee of the RTM is looking at that.
Yes.
I think Monica, when she did her presentation, was to dream a dream, like the massive wish list. Not that all of that would actually be done, but in case people ask questions, what are we going to do with this in the future? These were some possibilities, but maybe none of it will be done. Maybe it just needs to be maintained for open land.
Yeah, I don't think they're prepared to present any of that. I think what would be good, and I would love to see, is more about the operating costs of for, let's say, the next couple of years, where, let's just say, for the sake of discussion, nothing happens on the property other than we protect it, we probably improve the road, maybe we let the town over a couple of years use it as open space, which means we would just need restrooms and security and that kind of thing. I think that is something that I think is reasonable to ask them to do, but I don't think they're anywhere near ready to talk about what they will do with the property and therefore figure out what its costs are. That question's been asked before, and they're not ready to answer it.
And then there's still the question of governance, right? At the end of the day.
That's right.
Yep.
And does the town want to be, go into the business of being a landlord? Does the town want to go into a business of, renovating the main house and renting it out and turning this into a hotel, right? I mean, I've been asked so many questions of, okay, I understand everybody wants to have it. It's great. We don't want to have a builder. We don't have whatever 30, 60 houses in there. But what's going to happen? And I understand what the impact is tax wise, right? Will I have access? Can I go to the beach, right? Can I sit there every day? Where do I park? And what are all the financial implications of all that dreaming that's out there? And how will the governance work? And I don't think, that we're going to get the answer within the next week or two.
We're not.
Yeah.
We're definitely not.
So it's a leap of faith, right? Trusting that's, fine, we buy it and we know what the impact is, and then whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
I can give you one quick answer. There's not going to be a hotel there. There's no hotels allowed in Darien.
Mhm.
We took it out of the zoning code 3 years ago.
So much for that bed and breakfast.
That's out. Sorry. But I'm listening to you guys. Some of you guys I'm in one of your guys' districts. I think I'm still in Amy Azabatax's district, and I appreciate everything you guys do. The one thing that I would like to add, and I'm planning zoning, and you guys are planning zoning, so it's really not part of what I do for the town or do for a living. But right today, the property does produce income. It has an income stream, and I didn't check the taxes on it. It's not the highest paying tax thing in town, but the income producing of the property has today, it was reported to me that it covers the taxes. The other thing
Steve, can I interrupt? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
the numbers now are, it doesn't cover the tax gap if you look at the cost to maintain the property. So the numbers that were presented were, I think the taxes are about $750, and there's 800 in rental revenue, but there's 400,000 of expenses against that to maintain the property.
They cut the grass. Where did you get the 750 from in the taxes?
It was in one of the presentations. I'm not sure if it was Board of Finance or Board of Selectmen, but it's been up there.
I've seen the same number from the taxes, and I've heard the exact same number from the real estate agent when we walked the aisle, and the 800,000 and 400,000. And the equestrian center, by the way, doesn't even have a contract. I mean, it's an oral agreement, we were told.
The only other thing I want you guys just to realize, and I'm not trying to do anything, but I am very, very excited for Federal to open at the end of the summer. That's going to be a big add to the grand list. If they get it open by October 1st, which they're supposed to, it's supposed to open up, I think, August 15th. Tony Homicki already put an assessed value on that property. So that's supposed to hit the grand list of October 1st, 2022. The Baywater property, their first building, is also supposed to be open by October 2. So those two items are going to be added to the grand list. At the same time, if the town buys this one, will be taken off the grand list.
Good point.
Yeah, and the numbers that I've seen, just personally, I think they are underestimating the tax impact, but I will say they've been conservative about the grand list because of the reasons that Steve's just described.
Yep. Caroline, you've been patient.
Sorry, I have one specific question for Steve. You made me think of it. Several people have said to me, oh, can we use the house like Waveney and rent it out for weddings? Is that permitted by the town?
It would land up coming to the town for a special permit. Every single country club in Darien is in an R1 zone or an R2 zone, and every single one of them has a special permit, whether it's Tokenie Club or Middlesex Club or Waveney, or Weburn. everything that's done there is all subject to special permit.
And is that something you have to apply for a permit every time you want to use it, or do you get a blanket permit that's good for a year or 5 years or something?
It would be, Caroline, this would be similar to what goes on now at the DCA house on Middlesex Road. As you know, that's a very common wedding venue.
Yeah.
Where they have lots of events. So certainly something like that is allowed by special permit in this zone. So that would be a possibility.
Okay.
So you couldn't have, Stephen, you couldn't have, if that's a wedding venue, right? You couldn't have some of the rooms if they renovate that estates for guests to stay for that particular wedding.
That actually didn't that come across us from another country club that went through that, Jeremy, and it died?
I guess the argument there would be when you talk is that a typical type situation for a wedding venue? Boy, I wouldn't want to make a commitment one way or the other on that argument. But certainly Steve is absolutely correct. Hotels and motels are not allowed anywhere in the town of Darien.
Either Airbnb, right? You can
Airbnb, bed and breakfasts are not either. The commission very specifically made that decision a few years ago, and that is what it is.
And from a wedding venue, for those that haven't seen it yet, again, many of you have seen it, which is great. It's not that big.
Yeah, it would need a big tent.
It's a fraction of the size of Waveney.
Oh yeah, and I mean that for me opens a different perspective, because one of the arguments for, I mean, the questions that we had on the tour was, what you're gonna do with the estate house, right? And the answer was, you have it's a wedding venue, and people can stay here, and whenever they have the events, if you renovate the whole place, and they go like the same thing. If you look on how much space you have downstairs,
it's not
right?
very big. It's small.
Not very big, and it's, again, I don't know, but it's at least half of the size is basically a house, right, with bedrooms.
Yeah.
And then of course you have everything on there, and if you cannot even rent this out, and you just can rent 2 or 3 rooms, I'm questioning how marketable that will be as a venue, wedding venue, for example.
You could have, if you look at the special permit for the Oxbridge Racket and Riding Club, they can have venues, they can have weddings there, and they have no interior space that I've been inside.
Yeah.
And I was saying DCA, they do 10 outside, and when we did the Oxbridge Racket and Riding Club, in their specific special permit, they have X number of weddings that they're allowed to have per year, and those are small, and so is the DCA. So can you? Oh, sure. And do they bring in caterers? Sure. I'm 90% sure there's no kitchen at the Oxford Racket and Riding Club.
Yeah.
And you have weddings there. But again, we're not. This is not part of what I do for the town. But we have to look at all this stuff. I mean, that's the bells and whistles and belts and suspenders. Anything that's ever going to be proposed on there is going to come in front of planning, zoning, and it's going to be subject to a public hearing. Anything.
And I would say this, when you talk about, hey, there is no certainty as to what the town is going to do, and we all agree with that. There is no certainty. However, we have seen, for example, with Highland Farm, when the town bought Highland Farm, there was no certainty, and there still is not to this day what the town is going to do with Highland Farm. And to this day, there is no certainty what's going on with, Pear Tree Point Beach. They have a study committee. So times change, town priorities change, town needs change. And we've seen that many years ago. The town bought property for a school up in the north part of town off Camp Avenue, and the town bought a driveway access with the expectation that they would need a school on basically what's now the Kensett property. And it turned out at the time that the town did not buy that property, and that is now Kensett. But back 50, 60 years ago, people bought property expecting a certain use, and it didn't occur. So Certainly needs of the communities change over time. And once the town puts something somewhere, like say where I go to work every day used to be a school and now it's a town hall. What used to be town hall turned into housing, right? Old town hall homes. Then that was redeveloped. So keep in mind, we're just one little piece of time, one little generation of 15 to 20 years. And I almost guarantee what we see in Darien today on town-owned properties will not be the same in 20 or 40 years from now. That's what keeps people like me in business.
No, that's true, but
you could throw Edgerton in the old school there in that mix too.
Yeah, what's going on behind Middlesex Middle School? If anyone knows, please tell me. I've heard many, I've been around 28 years. I've heard 20 different ideas, and certainly it's not a priority today. Who knows? But that's another town area that, hey, there's potential for the town to do lots of things there. Highland Farms, another blank canvas, if you will. Pear Tree Point Beach, there's a committee set up, and they've been looking at things for years. So town needs change, the environment changes, the residents change, their desires and needs. So to say there's no certain use, I would argue there's no certain use for Cherry Lawn Park today.
Yeah, but I think Jeremy, one to acknowledge that an island is something different than Bay Winnie Park, for example. If people have access there and there are buildings on there, they're not safe. How are you going to manage all of that? So it's different than certain buildings in town. And an island is very, very, very different. That has constructions on it than a park or than some other town property.
Some of the things that were just being discussed are what I was referring to earlier when I said I wish there were. I think someone else brought up the communication piece of it. I wish that the residents understood more, because I just think there's so much assuming going on. When people are, when someone will say, "Oh, well, we're going to use the main house for a wedding venue." Okay, but do you realize we can't use the rooms? We can't do this. It might cost $10 million to make it habitable. I mean, whatever. There's just so much that people are assuming, and it makes me nervous.
But I will say this: the task at hand, we need to. It was great to bring all of this to light, and in one format. But now we need to kind of zone back in to what the task at hand that we're going to be asked to make and do next week is. We are examining the potential purchase of this. We're not examining the uses, just like when you buy a house that you think you're going to renovate, and you dive into it and you already own it, and hey, guess what? I can't do that renovation. Then you have a choice to make. We're going to, and to Jeremy's point, there's going to be iterative needs over generations, and the town can sell it one day if they feel like that's the best use. But today we're going to be asked to render a decision and a recommendation on this purchase over specific items that are the most critical on regarding to ownership, and and those are the discussions that largely we talked about in executive session. And then keep in mind with general alternatives to other development use, if we don't make the purchase, and how you feel about that as a committee member, and for the town of Darien, if it's not under our hands, what potential other options are. So I do think we did hear a lot of other things that are going to be much more deeper dive by other committees, things like safety, things like roadways. Those are going to be, and the financials, those are the heavy lifts of those analysis and due diligence is going to be borne by other committees. Of course, we are talking about them, but we do need to, at the end of the day, do our job. And that's the discussion points, I think, that we largely had to talk about in executive session. So common thread throughout everybody's committee is of course the financials. I would highly, highly, highly recommend to everybody to review the Vimeo on the latest Board of Finance that Priscilla itemized to us, and also just to the extent that you can view the other Vimeos from the other committees' evaluations if those are important decisions personally for you. But that's my wrap up. And hopefully we're going to have a little more clarity on those other issues that we discussed.
Yeah, maybe one point to what you said. For me, it's more than just a purchase, to be honest. If you purchase a house, right, it's about the purchase price. But if you think you're not paying any property taxes, you're not paying any maintenance cost, you're not paying for oil and gas and water, right, and you don't know what the running costs of a house are, then making your purchase decision of a house and what you can afford for the house in terms of mortgage, right, and leaving all the other costs out, it's just not the right way anybody looks at it. Yeah. So for me, it is more than just the purchase price. It is what are the ongoing costs if you do nothing, and what are potential costs and financial impacts that will have down the line. And we all know that we're losing income as well.
And that's why I encourage everybody to view the F&B, because as I mentioned, the financial thread definitely goes across all the committees. We're not doing the evaluation, but it is part and parcel of everybody's thought process. Okay. Any other closing thoughts on things that we haven't discussed yet with regards to information? I have a list of the information that I'm hoping to get for the group before next Thursday. To the extent that anybody, after they review the Board of Finance and the F&B evaluations, if there's additional particular questions that you'd like to get answered before Thursday, please email me and the group. Just keep in mind any email that correspondence that happens with a quorum, with more than 8 of us, is considered a public meeting. So I would recommend, funnel it to me, and then I will disperse it if you can. Anything else?
Thank you for inviting us.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
We need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, 9:53. Motion to adjourn by, was that Michael or Mike?
Mike. Doesn't matter. You can put it under me if you want.
We'll propose it and I'll second it.
There you go.
All right. And then seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.